Coming up on this week's episode of the Xennial Odyssey podcast.
Professional bodybuilder. It's
You
something
are a
I have
professional
to,
bodybuilder.
I have to get used to saying that now. Usually I just say I'm a bodybuilder, but
Do
also
they do drug
if...
testing?
Sorry?
Do they do drug testing? I'm asking you this because you are in the mental health field.
Mm-hmm.
What are some kind of mental health related issues for people our age that are kind of specific to us? Everybody, welcome back to the XOP, the Xennial Odyssey podcast with Bobby Rocks here. Welcoming me is an actual guest who we're going to interview, and her name is Sherilyn Nicholas. So without further ado, I will turn it over to her so she can introduce herself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sherilyn Nicholas, as Bobby Rocks mentioned.
All right, good. So if people listen to the last one thing that we talked about was how we could have open discussions and debates on the podcast. And what I mean by that is if people don't fit into that category that was arbitrarily created, we could come on here and discuss it. And Sherilyn gets to be that first person because she was born in
1986.
So you were born in 86, which was
Yeah.
outside this window, but I'm going to give you a little test here. All right. These are some characteristics for all of us out there. How old were you when you got your first cell phone?
I was actually 18 when I got my first cell phone.
All right.
Yeah.
So you were late teens, early
Mhm.
20s?
Yeah.
All right. Perfect. Do you consider yourself cynical, or as I call it, realistic? I don't like cynical. I like realistic.
Yeah, cynical sounds a little harsh or negative, but
Okay. So
yeah.
good.
I'm
You
realistic.
consider yourself cynical, but at the same time, are you optimistic?
Yeah.
Do you remember
Maybe
a
even
world?
cautiously optimistic.
What's
Yeah.
that?
Maybe even cautiously
Oh,
optimistic.
okay. Thank you. Do you remember a world before the internet and before the digital age?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What was that like for you?
It was freedom. It was less stress. It was interesting. It was normal, what we considered normal then.
I mean, what did it look like? Give us an example of what that looked like for you.
Sans internet, or like the beginning of it.
Yeah, before the internet.
Oh, having to deal with, first off, learning how to use the internet, dealing with dial-up, and not being able to use the telephone at the same time while being on AOL, trying to get into chat rooms to talk with people or talk with your friends. It was really exciting and also frustrating at the same time. It's kind of really interesting how you had to be exercise more patience back then, waiting to get on, versus now we have technology at the drop of a hat. If it doesn't load within 2 seconds, everybody's like all upset about it. So it's really interesting to see how it's transcended and transpired over the years.
All right, this is one of my favorite ones. This is one of my favorite kind of Xennial traits, and for it doesn't great radio or podcasting without a video, but I'm putting up the air quotes. Did you have a MySpace? And by that I mean, did you have Tom as a friend?
I did. Tom was one of my friends. He was my first friend.
Excellent. Now, I love this trait. This is a great trait. I don't even remember where I found it, but did you listen to Blink-182, The Offspring, Incubus, or the Spice Girls?
Yes, and definitely yes.
All right. Well, I guess by what I found, you meet the criteria to be a Xennial. So welcome to the Odyssey.
Well, thank you. I don't feel that the age gap that I fall into or label I fall into doesn't necessarily match me, so it makes me happy.
All right, excellent, because that's going to be a little teaser for what we're going to discuss a little bit later. And by that, I mean, we're just going to discuss, businesses that you were either involved in starting up or what your profession is. We don't have to talk about that now.
Mm-hmm.
But typically what I do is I either go to a break, play a song, maybe play ads if this thing kind of really picks up and we have advertising.
Mm-hmm.
So what I can do is have you listen to a song. you can pick a song through my catalog.
Okay.
And then when we come back, you can talk about why you picked it, what, if it has something to do with the show, if it doesn't have something to do with the show, just whatever reason that you picked the song you did.
All
and
right.
then we'll go into the interview.
Cool. Sounds like a plan.
All right. Excellent. Love it. I think we've hit the ground running. How are you feeling?
Feeling good.
Feeling
Just
good?
chilling. Yeah.
All right. Excellent. All right. So before we do you want to just tell the people what you do primarily? What is your profession?
Yeah. Well, I kind of consider myself, and I've been told also that I'm like a jack of all trades. I primarily work as a clinician full time, but I also work part time as a personal trainer. I do have little side things that I try and do. I'm a Reiki master. I do yin yoga, doing small group classes, making bracelets that just kind of inspire people. Yeah, I kind of do it all.
All right.
Just pretty much promoting a lot of like positivity and like wellness, that kind of stuff.
But your primary job is a clinician?
Yes.
All right. And for people that, laymen out
A
there,
therapist,
like a mental health counselor.
a therapist, a counselor.
Yeah.
It's interchangeable. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So why don't we take this break? We'll pick that song. We'll play it. It'll fade right into this little outro that we're doing right here.
All right.
And when we come back, we'll talk about that and we'll get to know Sherilyn a little bit more on the XOP. All right, welcome back, everybody. That was Make It Rain by G's Guys. Again, all my music is brought to you from Soundstripe. Soundstripe is a royalty-free music site that I use. I pay a monthly fee for it, and that money goes directly to the independent artists that put their music out there. Again, that was Soundstripe, and that was Make It Rain by G's Guys, and that song was picked by Sherilyn.
Yeah, I just really enjoyed the vibe. I like the lo-fi vibe of it all. Just really relaxing, mellow.
You say it kind of fits your mood right now?
Yeah.
All right, good. So are you ready? Ready to dive in?
Yeah, let's do this.
Okay. So you, before we went to break, you told us that you are a mental health therapist.
Yes.
Can you
correct.
tell us a little bit about what you do without obviously going into specifics. I have talked about HIPAA law
Mm-hmm.
on the prior episode so that people kind of know that there's certain things that I can talk about because I work in human services, as I'm sure you do too.
Yes, I do. Been working in the field for over about 10 years or so.
All right, good. So yeah, just tell us about kind of what you've done in your career and what you do.
So started off pretty much as a counselor, meeting with patients in home, and then gradually went into outpatient therapy, residential work I've done, worked with children as well, and currently I'm now working with adults with disabilities. So I do a lot of educating on mental health, how to work with individuals, as well as monitoring psychotropic meds, making sure that the medications that the individuals are on are helpful to them, and to see if they need to be monitored and managed differently so that they can have the best possible life possible, if that makes sense, or to be able to function well without having to rely solely on psychotropic meds.
Can you give us kind of a layman's term for what psychotropic meds are? What are psychotropic meds?
Medications that help manage your mental health, whether it's anxiety, depression, psychosis.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Now, you did mention a little bit about some of the things you have on the side, I guess. You mentioned being a personal trainer.
Yes.
You mentioned, did you mention yoga?
Yes, I do. I practice yin yoga in part of a small group class that I created. Yes, I do yin yoga. I practice Reiki as well, and personal training.
What is Reiki, by the way?
Reiki is pretty much channeling the universal energy and allowing to clear blockages within your chakra. So it allows you to feel more clear, more energized. It might even bring things, problems that you may have mentally within your life kind of come to light, and can kind of give you some spiritual clarity. It's mostly hands off, unless there is some touch, but most of it is hands off if you would prefer that. And it's pretty much getting like a spiritual massage, for lack of better terms.
Now, when you say chakra, correct me if I'm wrong, but chakra is really like the energy we all have inside of ourselves?
Yes.
Okay.
And it's located by different zones, and the zones are named differently, and they have like colors associated with it as well too.
Okay, now, I've talked with you before, obviously not on a podcast, but about all these interests, because you are an extremely busy person.
Yeah.
But I have said that you are a jack of all trades and you're multi-talented. So what is your end goal with kind of all these things? Because on the surface, like almost like a therapist, to me, a therapist doesn't necessarily, gel with a personal trainer or yoga or Reiki. So
I know,
what's
it seems pretty scatterbrained, right? It's like all over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for the most part, these are all things that I'm interested in. Obviously, they're passions of mine. And ideally, I would like to be able to pull all of my passions into one uniform business, or a final destination, if you will. So it would be a great dream of mine to be able to incorporate mental health counseling and personal training and overall wellness into a hodgepodge little cluster, and have that be a business where whatever it is that somebody's looking for, maybe they're looking for individual therapy, but they don't want to do it in the traditional setting of going into an office and sitting on the couch, which is usually kind of like the butt of jokes for people when it comes to therapy, and why it kind of gets that negative rap, if you will. And being able to do therapy like while doing personal training, or while doing a yoga session, or while doing performing a Reiki session and following up afterwards. I think that it would be kind of great to kind of think outside of the box. I don't know if there's a market for it, but I'm willing to take a shot at creating one. And I would hope that it would be a nice segue for kind of like another step in the direction of mental health as well too, and just overall wellness.
Have you looked into the market for something like that?
I have looked to see if there's anything that exists, and I believe, if anything, there's kind of some stuff that goes on the West Coast, not necessarily of what I'm trying to put together, but it's very, very small and not over here.
Now, by over here, do you mean Massachusetts? Do you mean New England?
Yes, on the East Coast. I haven't seen anything on the East Coast that has anything that is related to what I'm trying to create.
All right. So you said you've been doing mental health work for approximately 10 years, correct?
Yeah. Yep.
How long have you been doing personal training, yoga, Reiki? Have you been doing all that at the same time?
So no, everything is all in different intervals. It was kind of all of, I came across after a couple of years and just kind of, evolving as an individual and just seeing where my interests lie. So the personal training came a couple of years ago. I've been an athlete for many years, did track and field. I started off with track and field back in high school and into college. Post-college, I was trying to kind of continue being an athlete. So I did some road races. I did duathlons. I did half marathons. And it just wasn't really cutting it. But I still wanted to hold on to being an athlete because being healthy and active is something that's really important to me. And also just maintaining overall health as well, too. So the personal training came along in around 2018. I did get my certification in that and started working at a gym shortly after. So I've been a personal trainer for about 4 years. And then the yoga, the yin yoga, I got certified in that, or took a certificate class, around the same time as well too. So about 4 years I've had that as well. And Reiki, I want to say that was probably 2017-ish, something on there. So it seems like it's kind of in the same gap of time, but it's about almost a year or so after each one. There's one after another, if that makes sense.
You sound very busy.
Yes, I am.
Is there anything else that you do?
So I am I'm a professional bodybuilder. It's
you are a professional bodybuilder.
I have to get used to saying that now. Usually I just say I'm a bodybuilder, but I recently earned my pro card back in October in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the Orion Cup championship. So yes, I am a professional bodybuilder.
What is the Orion Cup?
So the Orion Cup is the natural bodybuilding's prestigious event. Is the equivalent of the Arnold or the Olympia of natural bodybuilding. So it's a really big to do. You have to qualify to be able to participate in that show.
So when you say natural bodybuilding, do you mean no performance enhancing drugs?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. Natural bodybuilding is just that. It is natural. No performance enhancing drugs at all. As a matter of fact, to be able to participate, before you can even step on stage, you have to go through a polygraph test, screening. And if you pass, then you are able to compete. There are people that do fail, due to trying to beat the system and to increase their chances of being able to be on stage and being dishonest. They are usually caught and they're unable to compete. They are disqualified.
Do they do drug testing?
Sorry?
Do they do drug testing?
They do. So if for any reason somebody that is using a performance enhancement drug does win, does pass the polygraph, and they do perform and they do win their class, and in regards to their pro card status, then they are drug tested immediately after they walk off stage. And again, if it comes back that they are using something, then again they are disqualified.
Now, if I could go back earlier, you were describing just how big of a deal the Yorton national competition is. So I just kind of want to reframe it for anybody if they don't understand. So is that like the Super Bowl of natural bodybuilding?
Yes, it is. It is. Everybody comes out to watch it. It's the biggest event of the year. Usually most athletes are gearing up to either watch it or to aspire to go. You see a large pro turnout. It's quite the event. It is quite the event.
What?
And it was bigger this year, this time around due to COVID being a thing. So, just trying to get back to normalcy and being able to be in an arena. It was very, very fun to see and to kind of be around that vibe as well.
Wow. So what does it take to get to the point where you're on stage?
It's a lot of dedication. It's not easy by any means. And I know a lot of people kind of think about, it's dieting and working out a lot. yes and no. There's a lot of planning that goes into it. I would say that you have to want it for you, and you have to be able to, and willing to sacrifice a lot of time, because you're in prep for, depending on the level of fitness that you're in, and where you need to start, you have to sacrifice a lot of time and dedicate a lot of time to your workouts, to your meal prep, to eating, making sure your meals are almost timed down to the T so that you are at peak performance. Posing practices, making sure that you have all of the equipment that you need, or the equipment and tools that you would need for show day, making sure your suit selection, the color of your suit, your heels, your jewelry, how you're going to style your hair, making sure you have the proper makeup, the proper tan, getting a coach to help you with that, getting a little team behind you to help support you, because there are going to be days where you're low, you're angry, you're hangry, that you're just going to want to mentally say I'm good, this isn't enough, I'm tired. Maybe even also sacrificing events and social outings, because of the fact that, most social outings are surrounded by food, and there's certain foods that you're unable to eat while you're in that prep. So you're trying to avoid temptation and what have you. It gets really, really tiring, and it's very difficult. So if you are willing to do that, I would say definitely it's not something that you should just jump right into. It's definitely something that takes a lot of thought and consideration, and making sure that you have a team and a support system behind you to help you.
So that was one question I did have. I was going to ask if you have a coach or have a team, or you do this by yourself. So it doesn't really sound like you feel like you would be as successful if you were kind of doing this by yourself.
Yes. So I did start off by myself initially, but I did have one of my friends help me in regards to creating a workout plan and a nutritional plan. And it was kind of hard to do. We did a really good job from the distance, because distance was an issue. So kind of working remotely, if you will. And considering when it started, it wasn't a bad start.
It was kind of like you were preparing for COVID. You're doing virtually.
Without even knowing it ahead of time. Yeah, it was really funny how things kind of come full circle. But at the end of the day, it is definitely beneficial to have a coach behind you. So my coach is Bobby Biceps, Bobby Jean-Louis. He is awesome, very down to earth. I would not have been able to have gotten this far without having him be able to keep me on track and to support me in regards to my goals. So he was able to, we reached out and connected, and he asked me what were 2 or 3 of my goals. I listed them off, and in working with him for a really short period of time, within 2 shows of working together, we were able to not only hit, but achieve and transcend the goals that we initially set out to. I also have the support of my best friend and my husband as well, that have accompanied me from day one when I started this journey. Almost for 6 years it's been going on right now. So yeah, it's definitely important to be able to have that support system behind you. So
now let's kind of bring it all together here. So you are a mental health therapist.
Yes.
You are a personal trainer.
Yes.
You are a certified yoga instructor?
Not certified yoga instructor. I have a certificate in yin yoga specifically.
And you are certified to provide certain Reiki services?
Yes. I'm a Reiki master.
You're a professional bodybuilder?
Mm-hmm.
When do you have time to sleep?
What is sleep? What's that? Sleep is overrated, right? So I know there's that whole phrase you sleep when you're dead. I rather not wait, because I have a lot of life to live, I believe. But yeah, it's hard. It's hard, but you got to make time for it. If you really want it, you make time for it. You
absolutely fit one of the characteristics of our generation, of people our age, and that's you're driven. You're definitely hardworking. It sounds like you want to have a private practice that kind of covers all this stuff.
Yeah.
You want to be your own boss. You want that control over your career.
Yeah.
And you have all these interests that you want to tie into that.
Yes.
I commend you for that. That is incredible.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
One thing I want to talk about. So when I have guests on, you've done a phenomenal job describing your professions, your goals, your aspirations, your interests, showing how you have these characteristics that I've been talking about on end. But I do want to talk about things like, I don't know about you, but I feel like to the masses,
Mm-hmm.
Who kind of label us by our generations, if you will,
Yeah.
that the millennial generation has just continued. Like, it hasn't stopped.
Right? There's no cutoff.
Yeah. They
Yeah.
just keep adding time on.
Mhm.
Whereas, I've said this before, the Xennial moniker aside, I am a millennial, you are a millennial,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know if you felt like me. I just don't feel like
No,
the stereotypes that are out there.
absolutely not. No, I feel like it's like trying to force a label upon me that doesn't fit. Like trying to fit me into a box that I don't connect with by any means. Yeah, I don't like it. So if I can try and redefine it as best as I can, then I'm going to. And I feel like there's other people that feel that same way too. It sounds like you feel that same way as well.
Yeah. So for you, what is it about the millennial label that kind of rubs you the wrong way?
Well, a lot of what I'm hearing is like there's that self-entitlement. And it's like, no. And I have seen it. I mean, obviously in the years of working, I've definitely seen it. And I don't want to say that all millennials are like that by any means too. But I know from personal experience, I work hard for the things that I want and what I need. I don't just expect coming in like, oh, I'm fresh out of school and I'm educated, quote unquote, with a green, if you will. Now I want to have, a 6-figure salary and, 5 weeks vacation and all this kind of stuff, which you actually have to work and put in that time and earn it over years of experience. So I don't have that mentality where, I just expect things to be given to me just due to existing. I do put in that work and I expect and hope over time that the work that I'm putting in will then come back to me tenfold.
No, you put yourself out there with a lot of things, and you've talked again about having to work for everything. So I feel like when you put yourself out there and you have all these things you're doing and you have this drive that obviously it's not all success. There are step backs and failures and
absolutely.
How do you handle those moments of adversity?
Every situation is a little different. Some failures are a little harder to swallow than others. But for the most part, I've realized as I'm getting older, that is not as bad as it seems to be. I'm somebody that always has always have a plan B. Okay, if this doesn't work out, that sucks because this is what I really want to do. Okay, that doesn't work out. What do I need to do now to try and achieve that goal? I allow and honor the feelings that I feel if I failed or if something didn't work out. It's life, right? You're going to have disappointments and setbacks, but I try not to sit in those feelings for too long and start to try and reframe my thought process and try and pursue it and achieve it again.
So it sounds like you don't
I don't just give up and walk away.
You don't catastrophize it, number one.
I try not to.
You don't make things into bigger things than they are. You take them for what they are.
I try to, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not going to say that I haven't catastrophized a couple of things here and there, because it just seems like it's like a snowball effect.
We're all human beings, and I think that's okay.
Yeah.
But I think one of the monikers for our generation is that we just would fall to pieces.
Right.
We're not used to adversity, and we don't know how to deal with it. But what it sounds like from you is you actually have that perspective. You can learn. You've learned from your mistakes or your failures.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you've grown from that.
Yeah.
And you've become a better person because of that.
Right. Yeah.
Because honestly, that is one thing that I have heard. And so in my line of work, in my career, I've managed people. Mm-hmm. And as the time went along, I got more and more millennials that were born in the late 80s, the early 90s. Mm-hmm. And it's weird. I found there's like a dividing line for people. Yeah. Yeah. So when I would have to give constructive criticism to somebody who, let's say, is about 30 years old, I would get thank yous, and I would get it. It makes me feel like you're paying attention to the job I'm doing and you're invested in me. Mm-hmm. And then on the flip side, people maybe who are born in like the late 90s feel like it's all personal attacks.
Or even the 2000s now. Yeah, it's getting to that point.
Yeah, but people feel like I could do something so consistently with all the staff. I could come at them with the same tone of voice, the same, constructive feedback, but yet their responses to it are vastly different.
Right. And then, I mean, you can always kind of play like, is it being too emotionally sensitive, or is it just having a hard time with understanding and accepting constructive criticism? And like being in the field where you're being managed by other people, you're going to get constructive criticism, and it's feedback on your job so that you can continue to grow and do well. And some criticism is good. Like it's positive feedback, and you want to hear that positive feedback, but you're not going to always get positive. You need the negative as well too. So how do you, again, that goes back to the whole failure piece. How do you know what to fix if you don't know what the problem is? So I think it's really important that, people need to understand that it's okay to have constructive criticism, and it's okay to have your feelings about it, but then also being professional and, reflective on the process, and not, being reactive, if you will. And I think it's kind of hard for people to understand.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, the Zennial micro generation aside, this is a fact about all generations. I mean, when you're born at one end of it, and there's people born at the other end, which could be 20 years later, I mean, you're labeled under that same moniker, but what do you have in common when you were 20 years old when somebody was born?
Right. There's nothing. There's not a lot. Yeah.
I mean, and especially look at our generation. I mean, look what we've gone through in our lives. We had the first bombing of the World Trade Center when we were barely 10 years old. We had Waco, Texas, and the Davidian cultists people, and that whole situation. We had Oklahoma City. We had the mass media. I call it the mass media explosion. That's 24-hour news cycle.
Yeah, Columbine as well too.
Yeah, and I was getting into that, like school shootings, like Columbine. We've had 9/11. We've had recessions, and we've had a pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, we have been through adversity.
Right. And so the fact that you had mentioned, kind of bringing it back a little bit, where that, the assumption is that we crumble at adversity, is like, no, we watched it through our lives growing up, and we saw the things, we saw the successes, and we saw the missteps, and then we're learning from the history that we witnessed, and trying to, I would think, not repeat itself, if you will.
And I absolutely agree. And I think parenting, our parents and their styles definitely play into how we developed as people.
Yeah.
And I can speak for myself. So I'm born in 1982, so I'm really on that cusp of Generation X and Millennials, and I feel that kind of conflict. I mean, my oldest sibling, my sister, is a Gen X. She's 1975. She's a Generation X, and my brother is like me. He was born in 1980. He's on that cusp too. And it's interesting because I look at like my mother, and my mother was, I mean, she was brought up Irish Catholic, and she went to Catholic schools. And then you have my father, who was just this carefree person, charismatic. And when I remember being a child, and I remember him being like what you stereotypically hear about millennials' parents, that they didn't. That's another thing, that the millennials' parents didn't prepare them for the world. They told them like they were special.
Like, what was the example that they would give in regards to that?
You're special, and that the world is gonna just basically roll out a red carpet for you, is like the example that.
Yeah, that was not like my upbringing by any means.
Yeah,
and that was not the expectation. It was you work for whatever it is that you want, and you put in a good effort, and like the world's not going to give it to you. You need to work for it and earn it.
And that's the thing for me. So I had one parent, kind of more of that stereotypical millennial parent, and then I had another one. What was like, that was like old school, like what people who grew up in the 60s and 70s, like that was my other parent. And so on top of being between generations, I had these kind of conflicting parenting styles.
Yeah.
And I don't want to say it was terrible. I think it was wonderful. I mean, they both had their own strengths, and they used them well. And I was the youngest, so by the time I came along, they had figured out how they were going to be parents anyway. And that plays into my development, as opposed to, it's conversations I've had with my older siblings about, situations we had that were similar, and how our parents dealt with those with us.
Yeah.
So I think
That's a
we've
nice
covered a lot of
conversational piece.
ground.
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground today.
Mhm.
And I mean, you've brought some absolutely valuable insight into this. What are some? I'm asking you this because you are in the mental health field.
Mhm.
What are some kind of mental health related issues for people our age that are kind of specific to us?
I would say a lot of anxiety, a lot of depression, a lot of PTSD. Trying to break the stigma is the biggest thing that I'm noticing a lot. Is like literally blaring in your face. It's like break the silence, break the stigma. And it's, I'm glad that it's being said, because there are a lot of people that were, from what I've seen and just, being in the field and hearing it, and then also, speaking with my peers, both like in the field and like just my friends and personally, there's a lot of shame and guilt behind saying I have anxiety, I have depression, or I need to take a medication to help with my anxiety so I can function.
This may be an unpopular opinion, but I think in our adult life,
Mm-hmm.
I think the world is a much more open place.
Yeah.
It still has a way to go, but it's
absolutely.
it's a lot more
Absolutely.
open nowadays.
Yeah.
And
just the acceptance too. I think this is more accepted.
I kind of look at mental illness the way that maybe when we were like younger, like people looked at homosexuals.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of look at it like that. There's a stigma like that.
Yeah.
If you have a mental illness, you're kind of almost closeted. You're not supposed
Right.
to talk about it.
Right. And it's like, why not?
Yeah, exactly.
Why not?
Exactly. And I think it's okay, and it helps. I mean, one thing that I'm very passionate about is men, like male mental illness,
Mm.
because if you think about the male stereotype, it's quote unquote be a man,
Right.
Suck
And like,
it
what does
up.
that mean?
suck it up,
Also,
deal with it.
Be quiet.
Yeah,
Don't talk about
exactly.
your problems.
That's not how a man acts.
Swallowed it up. Like, don't say anything. Like, no.
And then,
No.
in my opinion, that's why suicide rates for men are high.
Absolutely. Because
So we suck it up until we just can't anymore, and
Right.
then we either attempt or sadly are successful in a suicide attempt because
Mhm.
we don't feel like there's a support network out there for us.
Right.
And so that's one thing that I think is great. That is opening up. You see it on like Facebook a lot.
Mhm.
A lot of military veterans, especially,
Mhm.
kind of opening up that for each other
Yeah.
and starting to open it up to people outside the military.
Mhm.
I would love to have, and I think I will reach out to someone I know who's in the military,
Mhm.
have them come on here. And I think if like you were on here, if you wanted to, if you wanted to, like that would be a excellent conversation.
I'm game. Yeah.
All right. So how was one thing? Some people do ask me what the Odyssey means in the name,
Mhm.
and for people who don't know what Odyssey means, it's basically like an adventure,
Mhm.
a trials and tribulations of life, the successes, the failures, the hardships, everything that's your story. So that's really what it means to me.
Mhm.
And if you think about it, every single episode, if I have people on, like Sherilyn here, she has kind of given us a little bit of her story, and this is her Odyssey.
Yeah.
And so I want to personally thank you for coming aboard with us today, Sherry.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Oh, I'm glad it was fun. And you weren't nervous at all?
For the most part, no.
All right.
No. I had my little moments, but honestly, no, it wasn't. It was really relaxing. It's kind of therapeutic.
All right. Excellent. This is the stuff I really want to do with this podcast. I really want this to be an entertaining, informative kind of podcast where we have people from all walks of life come on here and tell their stories. And really, it's about all of us connecting. So one thing, and I think about it now and I'm kind of trying not to laugh, is I don't want us to feel like we were bashing on millennials and all that. I feel like it's more of giving some information and seeing where people come from. And then again, if anybody on there felt like they were bashed, please reach out to me and you can come aboard here and tell your story. Because I really feel like this is about bringing people together.
And just and it's educational too.
Yes.
I think you're only getting one version of it per your experience. So maybe there's something that was missed or we don't know that other side. So I think it'd be great to hear that too.
And if someone wants to come on here and tell me I suck and I don't know what I'm talking about, I think that would make great content for a podcast. So, hey, we could do that too.
As long as there's actual like valid information. But no, I'm just joking. Sorry, I'm not going to stir the pot. No, but it was great. It was great.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Sherilyn, and thank you to everybody if you tuned in for the whole podcast. And as always, this Odyssey has come to a close, and we will see you next time. Take care.